Get started. I want to welcome you to the 6th Annual Farmland Access and Transfer Conference. This conference has been organized annually by Maine Farmland Trust and Land for Good. Maine Farmland Trust is a Maine-based organization that protects farmland, supports farmers, advances the future of farming. Land for Good works across New England to provide guidance to farmers, landowners, and communities as they navigate land access, tenure, and transfer. My name is Abby Sadauckas. I am the Maine field agent for Land for Good, and I'm also the co-owner of Apple Creek Farm, and that is located in what is now Bodenham. Meg, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Meg Quinn. I'm the event manager at Maine Farmland Trust, and I'll be running the tech in the background. So if you need anything, feel free to direct message me.
Thank you. So we invite you to share your name and your location in the chat box if you're able. If you know the native lands on which you reside, we'd also welcome you to acknowledge that in the chat as well. Please note that everyone is on mute to ensure that there isn't any background noise. Please remain on mute unless you're in a breakout space. We will collect questions from the audience via the chat. So if you have a question during the plenary session, we will get to that there. We love as many folks as possible to be visible when we're in the breakout space. So if you are able to turn on your camera, we'd love to see you in the room. If you are calling in by phone, if you could let us know that by unmuting yourself and just identifying yourself. And we will be using breakout groups during this session. We would like everyone to take a moment right now to rename themselves. And we have a slide to show you what we mean there. So if you just click on the 3 buttons next to your name, you can choose rename. And we would like you to use the convention that if you are a land seeker, if you could add seek and then your name and include your pronouns, that would be very helpful. If you're a land owner, if you could add own plus your name, that would be very helpful. And if you identify as Black, Indigenous, or a person of color and would like to join a BIPOC breakout session, please direct message Tech or Meg so that she can put you into that group when we get to those breakout sessions. And I will remind you of this again before we get to the breakouts. So give folks a minute with that renaming process. Perfect. All right. So Meg, if you could go to the next slide, that would be great. I want to thank all of the sponsors that are making this year's conference possible. This is a new format for the conference. Normally we look forward to gathering in person and connecting that way. But these sponsors have stepped up to ensure that this conference can happen and that we have space for this conversation. The funding for this event is in part provided by phase 3 of a Land for Good land access project grant, which is part of the USDA's Beginning Farmer and Rancher Development Program grant program. Sorry. I can go to the next slide. So today, this session is communication with farm seekers and landowners. And before we begin, I want to really acknowledge that this conversation takes place in what is now called Maine, which sits at the heart of unceded Wabanaki territory. Today, we'll be discussing power as it relates to who controls land and access to it. And we're doing so in the context of private property, which is a concept imposed upon Wabanaki territory by European colonialists and refined through US history and structure. As such, farming of Wabanaki territory has been used as a tool of colonialism and a means of control and dispossession. I ask you to acknowledge these facts and recognize that this conversation is taking place within our current legal system and cultural norms of private property. As we work within the system, I encourage you to think about ways, consider ways to make land access more just and equitable. If you're looking to take action today, a list of organizations focused on land justice will be provided at the end of the session. That will be a slide, and we'll also put those organizations in the chat. So if we could go to the next slide. So we have planned this session in combination with a pre-recorded session. This session is designed for both farmland seekers and farmland owners. And there's going to be an opportunity for each of you to share your vision, reflect on your intentions, and share your experiences. We will use a combination of live presentations and breakout spaces to extend the conversation. I hope that many of you have already accessed the pre-recorded content that's available on the website. If not, it will be there for you after this session. The conference website also includes additional resources to support this session. We're going to drop some of those links in the chat. And I want to say too that I'm joined today by 3 other really fantastic facilitators who are going to assist us in the breakout spaces. So I want to introduce them here. We are joined by Bo Dennis, who uses the pronouns he, him. He is the educational programs specialist at Bahlkow. Kara Cargill, she, her. Kara is the New Hampshire Land for Good field agent. And Heather Augustine, who works with Wabanaki Reach and also the Muhidin First Nation Youth Group. So you'll hear more from Heather as she is part of the panel. I want to introduce today's panelists, and then in the chat, we're going to provide more information about each of them. Heather Augustine, she, her, hers, Muhidin First Nation Youth Group, Maine Wabanaki Reach. Heather is a member of the Elsa Booktook First Nation in New Brunswick, Canada. She resides in Brunswick, Maine. First, Heather is a mother, auntie, and community organizer. Over the last few years, she has reclaimed Wabanaki territory by growing traditional foods that she shares with her community. Heather founded a youth group for Wabanaki kids in southern and mid-coast Maine. She has a strong commitment to cultural preservation and land return. We will also hear from Sonia Acevedo of Hide and Go Peep Farm. Sonia is the steward of a small farmstead in Somerset County with her husband and 7-year-old son, where they raise vegetables, rabbits, poultry, and dairy animals. Sonia is a former member of the group called No Class, whose goals were to educate and raise awareness about classism and class oppression, and conducted a listening project about landless farmers and their struggles in acquiring land tenure with the support of resources for organizing social change. Muhidin Libah, he, him, is the executive director and co-founder of the Somali Bantu Community Association of Maine. We're also going to refer to that organization as SBCA. Muhidin was born in southern Somalia. He grew up in a refugee camp in Kenya and came to the United States in 2004. Muhidin has a degree in biology from the University of Southern Maine and has co-founded multiple nonprofits, including Middle Juba Relief and Sustainability Organization, the Somali Bantu Community Association of Syracuse, the Somali Bantu Community Association, and the Somali Bantu Community Association of Maine. Muhidin is currently the president of the Little Juba Central Maine Agrarian Commons, and Muhidin is also a family man who just celebrated the birth of his 10th child. Lana Dracup, she, her, is also from the Somali Bantu Community Association. She is the farm operations manager and educator and is excited to be farming for her 8th season. Lana has experience raising a wide variety of organic vegetables, sheep, making sheep's milk cheese, maple sugaring, growing and designing cut flowers, and now flint corn production. Lana is currently the secretary of the board for the Little Juba Central Maine Agrarian Commons. She has a BA in environmental studies from Allegheny College and a master's in sustainable international development from the Heller School of Social Policy and Management at Brandeis University. Ashley Bahlkow, she, her, is SBCA's organizational advisor and land acquisition project lead. Ashley started volunteering with SBCA's farming programs upon their inception in 2014 and has continuously been involved with this community of farmers since, including working as a program advisor since 2017. Ashley has worked interculturally abroad and domestically since 2008 and has been supporting immigrant and refugee farmer programs since 2012. Ashley completed her master's thesis on local food systems in 2012 and currently is a board member for the Little Juba Central Maine Agrarian Commons. She holds a BA in journalism and a BA in international affairs from Northeastern University, as well as an MA in sustainable development from SIT Graduate Institute. So we are going to hear from this amazing group of panelists. We wanted to check in with you real quick and see who's in the room. So Meg is going to launch 2 questions and a poll so we can hear from you. And so we wanted to find out how you identify. Are you a land owner, a land seeker, a community member, an ag service provider? And how would you describe your intentions? Are you aiming to grow food for yourself, for others? Are you going to grow that food collaboratively? Are you exploring how to make your land available? Are you interested in making your land available? Are you ready to make your land available? So if you've already answered the question, I would love for you to rename yourselves. And I will put in the chat what we're hoping that folks will do with that renaming. We would love for folks to identify if they are a seeker or they are an owner of land. So put in seek or own plus your name and your pronouns, please. And we are going to use that information to use the breakout sessions later. So it looks like pretty much everybody has responded to our poll. Okay, so it looks like we are pretty evenly split between landowners and land seekers. We also have some community members and some service providers, which is fantastic. So for folks who are neither a land seeker or a land owner, you'll have the option to join whichever of those groups that you're most interested in. I would ask that you rename yourself with that intention. So if you'd like to be part of the seeker group, please use that code SEEK plus your name. So Meg can use that to break out those groups. And if you own land or want to hear about what we're going to talk about in the landowner group, you can use that convention to identify yourself that way. It looks like a lot of folks are looking at how to grow food collaboratively, as well as grow food for others. And there are several of you who are exploring how to make their land available. And one person who is here, kudos to you, that are ready to make their land available. So that is great. We are going to break out really briefly into a pair share. And we want to encourage folks to use these guidelines to support our community in this space today. So please be kind, be patient, particularly with this new tech platform that we're all kind of getting used to, and be accountable. So in the pair share, we'd love for you to introduce yourselves, include your name and your pronouns and your town or city. If you're a landowner, what are the top 3 reasons for making your land available? As a land seeker, what's your vision for how you might use the land? And if you're neither a land seeker or a land owner, if you're one of those community members or ag service providers, please share with the other person in your group how you, what you hope to learn from this session today. And Meg is going to break us into those groups.
is anybody leading this boat or are we all just hanging out here? Anybody know?
I was in a different breakout group, but someone left, so I was by myself. So I think I hijacked your group.
Welcome.
Thank
How
you.
exciting. We're just sitting here in a very meditative mood. Listening.
Oh, nice.
Is it for us to guide and lead, or how does it?
I think yes. I think we just tell like I am a land seeker.
I'm not sure which group I was supposed to be in. I'm just sitting here alone too.
Okay.
You were in my group and you left. It was a
Which
pair
group are you
share.
in?
This was just a sharing between two people of if you are a land seeker, I can't read that.
You should have received or seen
Yeah.
notice pop up that you were asked to join a breakout group. And then you say join
Okay.
and it will send you there. If you did
Yeah.
not, that's okay. You can have a breakout session right here.
All right.
Oh, okay. So we're sort of the non-broken breakout.
The misfits.
Yeah.
The ones who don't follow directions very well.
That would be me.
Oh, here's a join a breakup. Okay, well, we might see you later. We're about to join a breakout.
Excellent.
One more minute to chat.
Just for the record, we went to room 20 and it was very lonely there.
So,
We have yet to have a conversation with anybody. Talk to us.
Well, you can have that conversation here. It looks like they were extended a little bit longer than I expected.
Great.
So welcome, Tori and Carl. Hi, Muhidin.
Hi, how are you?
Pretty good. It looks like Heather is here and maybe Ashley is here too. I got a text from Ashley.
Oh, okay. Finally.
Hey,
It looks like Meg will call everybody back in.
Yeah,
She'll
I'm
be
going to
seeing
close all the
everybody.
rooms now.
Super. So Heather, you're up first. I'm just going to acknowledge that you're going to be speaking first and bring us back together.
Okay.
All right. looks like we've got some people back, but some people not.
They'll automatically close in 15 seconds.
Okay. Thanks everybody for flexing with our tech challenge here. Looks like we're all back, so I'm going to turn things over to our first speaker in the panel. That is going to be Heather Augustine.
Hi, everyone. I hope you're all doing well and staying safe. I'm really nervous, so I don't know if you can hear my heart beating from your house, but I feel like I can hear it beating. I'm just going to share with you a little bit about who I am and my story and what my experience has been thus far growing food on someone else's land. So I am from Elsipogtog First Nation in New Brunswick, Canada, but I've lived most of my life in Maine and Cape Cod, Massachusetts. I grew up very disconnected from my community. My mom is not Native and my dad is Native. So when we moved back when I was 5 years old from Canada back to the States, I would go years without being able to connect with my community. And as a result of growing up with this need to want to be with my family and hear my language and listen to the songs, I, with the help of my friend Kessie Kimball and my two brothers, we started a youth group. We meet at the Durham Friends Meeting House, and the name of our group is Maui Downage First Nation Youth Group. That means the place where we gather. Together in our group, we learn about our cultural life ways, we eat delicious food, we have cultural projects together, and the heart and soul of what we've been doing over the last couple of years has been this garden project that we've done together. Before COVID, we were meeting sometimes twice a month, but since obviously we're just meeting virtually and connecting in all the other ways that we're all connecting now. When we started, like I said, it was just 4 families, but over the years, we have grown to more than 20 families. And the center of all of our meetings has always been food. So it only made sense for us to start gardening together. I've been growing food at multiple locations, and I really love the idea of growing in many different places because I feel like every single time I put a seed in the ground and begin that relationship, it's reclaiming territory that was taken. This is unceded Wabanaki land. My relationship with food started as a relationship where there was a lack of food. So we definitely on my reservation dealt with a lot of food security issues. Hunting and fishing has always been a huge part of our livelihood forever. but there was never a lot of vegetables and fruit. We relied upon the government for bread and milk and cheese, and oftentimes we would celebrate just a bag of flour so we could make bannock or what's called fry bread. So I grew up with this, feeling of wanting more always. When we moved back to Cape Cod, my grandfather, who was not native, was the most amazing gardener. He had really a huge, following. People would come over and ask him questions in the neighborhood all the time at how his butternut squash and how his corn and everything was flourishing as well as it was. I, at that time, really started to build a relationship with plants, and I remember feeling like the squash and beans and potatoes and corn were my friends and my siblings, and I loved them. And I'm sorry, I'm nervous. I remember at this one time my mom bought me these new sneakers, these kangaroo sneakers, the ones with the zipper. I don't know if they make them anymore. And they were stark white. And we came home after she bought me these sneakers, and I was playing out in the yard, and I wanted to go into the garden so bad to see, my friends, these plants. But I told myself, if you do that, you're going to destroy your sneakers. But I just couldn't stop myself. That's how much I wanted to be in there with the plants and playing and pretending. And so that is really where I developed this deep connection to growing food and plants. My grandfather and grandmother preserved everything. And we had jars filled up in the basement of just, onions, potatoes, squash, relish, you name it, they canned it. And I would like to go down there when I was a little kid and just sit in the basement and just look at the food and just look at all the jars and feel good. And I realized later on in life that that came from most likely having the issues with food security as a child and as a small child. And so I knew without knowing that sitting down there amongst all those jars of goods that that meant security, and that meant something that plentiful abundance. There's something so good and important. I was able to see the process of putting a seed into the ground and taking it all the way to, a jar of preserved food. And so that was a really important experience for me as a child. And as I grew up, I really had this strong belief that I wouldn't be able to um, ever have my own garden unless I owned land. And I really had given up on it. I've never been in a financial position to be a landowner. And so I always just had this feeling of loss. And I wanted so badly to be able to give that to my now 4 children. But the years went by, and occasionally I would have like a potted plant in my backyard, a tomato plant that would never really produce much, but I always had a strong love for it. When I started the youth group, and it only made sense for us to begin growing food together, I was able, because of them, they sort of gave me the power and strength to reach out and consider resources that were available to me to do that. So I started hunting around, finding places and putting myself out there and asking for land to grow food. And it's just been 2 years. The first season was very minimal. I didn't really get the chance to grow very many things. Well, I tried, but it was pretty much an epic fail. Like the bugs ate my food or the animals ate my food. I mean, whatever the case may be, for all of my time and effort of mine and the kids, at the end of the season, we had this little basket, between a couple of different garden spaces. But that was okay because we had all established this relationship with the ground, with the soil, with all the plants and animals and the rocks and the trees. And it was just like, and maybe in part like the vitamin D, like from the sun. I don't know. There was just like so many beautiful things about the whole process, even though in the end, like we really didn't get to eat much of our food. However, I did reach out to different farm stands that were growing the things that we grew, but had more success, and we were able to at least try some of these foods. So it was not as successful the first year. So in planning on this next season, which was this last season here, COVID hit right before, and the scope of our garden really changed from like a cultural project and an opportunity to enjoy our time with one another to a need to provide food for the urban Wabanaki community in the event of a food shortage. So that was really my goal going into it this year. And I thought about the foods that I want to grow in a more focused way. I thought like I want to grow food that's really going to stick to their ribs, you know? And so we grew potatoes and squash, corn. We grew Abenaki callus flint corn to make cornmeal, which is like the best cornmeal that you could ever have, in my opinion. And this past season, we grew over, I think it's over 700 pounds of food. I stopped weighing it after 700 pounds and I just started eyeballing it. So it was probably more than, 800, 900 pounds of food. I don't know, tons of potatoes. And we've been able to distribute that to the Wabanaki community, the urban community, and we are doing food baskets right now that we're giving out weekly to community members. So just to share a little bit with you, I've come up against a lot of struggles and hardships and roadblocks in learning to negotiate with landowners on how I would like to use their land. And some of my experiences just as like a person of color with children that are also of color growing on land, we really kind of stick out, and there's a lot of stares and a lot of questions about like, what are you doing here? What is this all about? Like, we're not really treated just like anybody else that's growing there at these various places. And because of this deep need to build a connection with the soil and with the land, and because the relationship is almost ceremonial and sacred between like myself, the children that help me, and the plants and earth, I have learned that it's a very private experience for us, and the need to grow somewhere where it's very safe to be able to have that privacy, I have learned is very important to me. My goal is to have a space away from everybody else, and especially since there are children involved, my kids especially. I'm a single mom. I have 4 kids, and they're wild, really wild. So I've always felt going to these different public places to grow food that I needed to just keep my kids quiet and, don't be too loud, don't fight with each other. So I know part of me wanting a private space is also the need to just let my kids be who they are, wild and free. And so it's important that we have not only a safe private place to grow land for the need to sometimes like, we smudge before we start. We when we're making our mounds, it's like the womb of a mother, you build up that soil and you put all your great special intentions into that soil, and you thank the soil, and you make promises that, I'm going to take care of you because I know you're going to take care of me. And it's not necessarily it's spiritual, and who wants to really have this spiritual experience while people are watching you like you're like a sideshow or something like that. And I've learned through my experience that it's important for me to grow land that's not connected to someone's home, that I don't want to have to communicate about access constantly. And is it okay if I come today? Should I come another time? Do you have people? There have been times where I've been doing our thing, and then friends come over and they just want to watch us and ask questions. And I'm not a teacher. Just like when my grandfather was working, when he was starting his garden, he wasn't a teacher either. If you wanted to learn, you watched him and you asked if he needed any help, but there was no sort of instruction around it. And I'm very similar in how I do it. Some of my kids participate fully and most of them don't. I gotta bribe them to help, and that's okay. That's just, we do what we got to do. When it comes time to harvest, the bribe gets a little bigger, because I need their help. And so what I've learned about this process for me is, the need to have the privacy, and also a real strong need to communicate with the landowner. Like, why do you want me here? Like, what's the point? Do you have this need, do you want me here because you want to learn about Wabanaki culture? Do you want me here because you have this far-reaching goal of hoping to get grants to offer your land to Wabanaki people? Do you want to do it just because you like to share? And, for many years I trained in jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai kickboxing. And our instructor would tell us that everything costs something, and I've learned over time to ask myself, when I'm building a relationship with someone that would like to share their land with me, what is the cost? Is it gas money because it's really far? Is it that I'll have to share a piece of my heart and soul and my struggle as what my life has been like with you? Is it a need for a friendship? Is it, what is the cost? Because it's true, everything costs something, and nothing is really free. And I've also learned to negotiate what land owners are hoping out of the harvest. And it's important. Through my experiences, I've learned that I need to be very clear and ask those questions. Like, do you want 50 squash and 25 pounds of potatoes, and you want this much cornmeal? So it's important for me to really ask all of those hard, uncomfortable questions. I don't like talking about money, but sometimes money is maybe the best way to just create a space that's safe and you don't have to deal with all of those other barriers. I could go on and on forever, but I just want to say that I have just big dreams about what the future looks like for the Wabanaki community, about being able to bring us all together to grow food. I have big dreams about teaching the kids to learn from the very first seed in the ground, or preparing the soil ahead of time, and all the steps that it takes to get to a place where you're sitting down at the table eating food with one another. I have big dreams and I have big hopes, and I really appreciate this opportunity to come here and share a little piece of my story and what it's been like. And when it's all said and done, it has been like the best 2 years of my life, despite all of the roadblocks I've come up against and the hardships of growing food in community during a pandemic. All of that aside, I've loved every single second of it. So I just want to express my gratitude to you all for being here and participating in this. And that's all I got.
Thanks so much, Heather. We are going to hear from Sonia Acevedo next. If you have questions for the speakers as we go along, you could put those in the chat and we will hold them until we come to the question and answer component. So Sonia, over to you.
Okay, am I unmuted? Can you hear me? Okay, I can't hear Abby, but I think that's okay because she's muted. Sorry, I've never actually used this platform before. I'm terrified of technology. My name is Sonia Acevedo. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a land, I don't want to say owner, but I have a legal deed to a farm in what's now known as East Madison. We have a small farmstead where we have some dairy animals, supply a couple families, have a small veggie stand in the summertime, and host 2 to 4 young people every summer to try to teach people about growing food. And I guess I want to start by saying that I looked for land tenure for almost 10 years. I broke ground, new ground, 7 seasons in a row. And, you know, what Heather just spoke about was really relatable. I was a single mom for almost all that time. Abby asked us to maybe speak to some of the challenges we had in looking for land. And, you know, I guess first and foremost, forgive my paper rustling. I was a single mother. I was a low paid agricultural worker. I had 2 kids. My income was less than $10,000 a year for years. And on top of that, I am in default on my student loans and decided to engage in debt resistance. I don't think that I should have to pay that money back. It's not fair. And so that meant for me, there was never going to be an opportunity for a traditional loan. There was never going to be the opportunity to buy a big farm like the ones that are listed on FarmLink, where they're 200 acres and they're $300,000 farms. That was never going to be in the cards for me. So I knew that I was going to have to find a different way of accessing land and trying to think outside of the box. And so I definitely was in no less than 5 different land arrangements where there were landowners who refused to go to contract after saying they wanted to sign with me, or they backed out of handshake agreements, or I had an opportunity where looked there was going to be some kind of land transfer based on sweat equity. So we really were on this kind of merry-go-round, and I was looking not only for farmland, but I was looking for farmland with a resident on, you know, with a house on site, because I had 2 children that I had to feed and clothe. And I guess, you know, some of my struggles came out of my own stubbornness as well. I did some volunteer time in the Gulf Coast in 2005 after Katrina, and I saw what those communities looked like when they didn't have access to food and water. And I saw the way that people of color were left in these cities to die. And so I came back up from doing that volunteer work, scooped up my children and ran into the woods and was like, no, I'm not going to do anything but farm. I don't care if I'm only getting paid $8 an hour. I'm learning how to grow food. And so, you know, I lived as a seasonal farm worker. I would work a greenhouse in the spring, and, you know, I would rake, you know, blueberries in the summertime, and I would pick apples in the fall, and then I would trim someone's marijuana crop, and then I would hunker down for the winter and I would, at the end of the season, I would take all the vegetables from whatever plot that I had, stick them in boxes, stick them in the back of my Subaru wagon, and drive to the next place I had as a rental. So, you know, some of those struggles or some of those challenges were definitely imposed on me by an unjust economic system. And some of them were maybe the result of my own single-mindedness, where I was not going to say, well, I'm going to go see if I can get some job somewhere else and save up money, and then I'm going to come back to farming. I'm like, it's now, this is what I do. This is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And I'm not doing anything else but growing food, because that seemed to be the most solid way I could support my family, you know, if that makes sense. But it was really challenging trying to leverage land without resources. When dealing with landowners, a lot of the time the landowners had the access to privilege and resources where they didn't have to negotiate with me. They could just say, well, I don't like you. Or, you know, I mean, sometimes landowners realize they need more privacy than, you know, a woman and her, you know, rambunctious children like running through their fields. There were some real things there. I encountered a situation where I grew a garden full of food, and then come August, when it was harvest time, the landowner wanted to evict. And that's unfortunately a scenario I've seen with other, I think, particular vegetable growers. The land deal is good until it's harvest time, and then the tenants are kicked off and the landowners are selling the food on the market. So I wish I could come to the table with the kind of like beautiful positivity and spirituality that like Heather brought, but it's really hard to tamp down like the anger, about that kind of economic injustice. But I think also that anger kind of led me to a more or less happy ending on our, I'm now married, so that definitely was helpful in terms of acquiring land, having a partner to collaborate with. But on our very last land deal, we had a landowner who said they were going to sign a contract with us. We had the contract written out. We were all ready to go. The lawyers had looked at it, and then all of a sudden they wouldn't sign. And it's June and the crops were in the ground. And then it turned out that they owed money on the land. They owed money, to the town. The land was potentially going to be foreclosed on. All of these things came out, and we just said, well, enough is enough. And we did the research. We called Pine Tree Legal. I spent hours looking up Maine statutes, and I was reading a book called 9/10 of the Law, which is about squatting, and we squatted the place. We illegally, technically legally, because we were never taken to court, but we decided to occupy the land that we were on. And that occupation gave us a year of no overhead, which allowed us to save the money that we needed to actually make a down payment on land. So we really just kind of went around all kinds of back doors. I was pregnant at the time. I had my child in a squat. Those are the lengths that we were willing to go through, or that we had to go through, to access land security. And so I guess, in terms of there being, a takeaway, besides, I don't know, there being some takeaways from that, definitely in thinking about negotiating with landowners. I think it's really important to make sure you have a contract. I don't even believe in land ownership. I don't believe in private property. And we're all, I'm sitting on stolen land as it is. So, and I was really resistant to getting into contract because of those deeply held beliefs. But, I think at the end of it, when you're negotiating with a landowner and you need to be clear about what you want, and if they're not willing to sign with you, it's best to move on and try to find something else, because if someone's not willing to make a commitment to you, you don't want that commitment to waffle when you've got a crop in, or if you got kids riding on it or whatever. So, and I was very helpful. Land for Good was really helpful because they had put on some workshops about contract writing, and that made it possible for me to write a contract for the land that we ended up on. And then I guess the other part of it is that we had to do a lot of research, our own research on real estate trends to understand where land is cheap, where land is expensive, where properties sit unsold for a really long time, and where they move really fast, because without a cash leverage, that educational leverage helped us secure a piece of land. And so that was really, that kind of self-education was really important. And we ended up finding, and I guess another, to kind of think outside the box in terms of what is a farm property. I feel like I know a lot of other like beginning farmers who get these big parcels of land and then they're indebted to an extent that I would never be able to pay off. So we were looking at just raw tracts of land, stuff that was falling down, stuff that no one would ever think was a farm. And I was just looking at the soil. I would just walk through the grass and I would see what plants are growing here. And I'm like, no, this is garbage. You can't farm this. Or no, the goats can't eat. Well, goats can eat anything. But, I could tell by looking. And we just looked. I mean, I must have been at 100 places with my like 9/10 of the law book in one hand and my like first time property owner's book in the other hand. It was kind of wild, but we found basically a property that was foreclosure condition with a house, foreclosure price, had 14 acres, great soil, great pastures. I could raise so many sheep here. You know, I have a cow calf pair that it's less than an acre, and rotating it feeds them. Like, that's how good the stuff is. But it was a foreclosure property in, you know, I live in Somerset County. Property values are pretty low here. And so it was cheap. And we made an offer in November. And properties never move in November because it's the end of the cycle. So kind of that kind of real estate lesson, knowing that, you know, stuff like is high in the spring and people are more desperate to make a deal in the fall, you know, those were, you know, but it was kind of a hard road to come to realize I wasn't necessarily going to be able to find some beautiful partnership with someone that wasn't going to involve, you know, those kinds of legal contracts. I think in the end, we're really lucky because there are no banks involved. We would never be able to get a conventional loan. We're able to owner finance this piece of property because they owned it outright and there were no banks involved. So we got really lucky, you know. But also, I think if I had something to leave on, I mean, we got very lucky, but we also were really privileged. You can't tell that English is not my first language. I have white passing privilege, you know, so people can't tell. You know, me and my husband, we look like a heterosexual couple, you know, so we have this straight passing privilege. We have this white passing privilege. We're both college educated. I was an English major, so I'm trained to speak and write, and you can't tell that I'm poor by looking or talking to me if I don't want you to. And, you know, those are some of the things that in the group no class that, you know, that we talked about, the kinds of cultural privileges that come along with growing up with money, with growing up with resources. And, you know, those things are really hard to unpack. So we got lucky, but we also were really privileged, I think, in terms of like passing privilege and educational privilege, you know. So not that I don't know, not that I want to like write our own struggles off, but that is a factor for people that has to be taken into consideration. I don't know. I had this, you know, I think that's pretty much it. I had this like wonderful outline and piece of paper, which I then didn't look at for the entirety, but I feel really fortunate to have found a place to settle. And maybe I could leave on that I think where there's a will, there's a way, especially for people who are land seeking. And I think that it's really easy to not stand up for yourself, you know, and stand up for your rights, but to know your rights as a tenant, you know, to know your rights, you know, in that way, being able to stand up for ourselves, you know, definitely was one of the crucial pieces in us finally being landed and me not having to pack up my vegetables in a Subaru wagon every year. So I think that's a good place to leave off. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sonia. So next we're going to hear from the Somali Bantu Community Association. And so I'll turn it over. I'm not sure who will take the lead, but I'll turn it over.
Muhidin, are you going to kick us off?
Yes, my name is Muhidin Libah. I am the co-founder and director for Somali Bantu Community Association of Maine. Can you guys hear me?
Yes. We can hear you.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Muhidin Libah. I'm the director for Somali Bantu Community Association of Maine. Hold on. I came to the country, US country, in 2004, September, right around this time. And the first place I landed was upstate New York. And I was there for a year. And I started a nonprofit organization in Syracuse, New York, as you have heard from my bio. And the reason I'm in Maine is for this Somali Bantu Community Association. They asked me to come here and organize this nonprofit organization. So SBCA has been in existence since 2005, and our main mission was to help the refugee and immigrant population with transitional services. Things like people will come with paperwork and we help them, we ask them, we ask partners to help if we can't help. So in 2004 is when we started farming program. The reason being, all the Somali Bantu community members were farmers by background in Somalia. Our people live between the two rivers, and our economic activity was farming. So we decided to start a farming project. We have been looking for a piece of land starting from 2007 all the way to 2014. So we got a piece of land thanks to Ashley and Dan, who are responsible in helping us to get the first piece. We started in 2014 with 20 farmers in the middle of May. So we scrambled with like tools and seedlings. And the first year was we depended on donations of seeds and seedlings from other farmers in the area. So by 2015, our program doubled, and we started looking for another piece of land. We got a piece of leased land in New Gloucester, which was about 3-4 miles away from North Yarmouth. And we started getting more farmers because the program was so successful and people started interested in the program because number one, it was a food security program. Number two, that was the only way our community members could produce healthy food that they know where it's coming from and without using a lot of money because healthy food costs a lot. So we wanted to have a healthy food and we did not have the money to buy healthy food. So that was how we started the program. And SBCA farming program, in other words, Liberation Farm, serves about 212 farmers between Lewiston Field and Whiting Farm, which Lewiston has just ended by December 31st. And we will be in Whiting Farm only this year. So all the 212 farmers will be on Whiting Farm farming. We have had goats in green. We had goats in Tana in 2018, and we moved the goats to green in 2019, and now the goats are in our new property in Wales. So relationships that we had, lease relationships that we had was in our culture, in our area, Somalia, Southern Somalia, let me say, is that all you need to do is just show up to the elders, community elders houses and ask them, I'm moving here, I need a piece of land to build on my house, and I need a piece of land to farm on. That's all you need. And the elders will explain the rules and what you have to pay, the dues and all this. And then you are given the 2 pieces of land for free. Where you have to sign a lot of documents to just rent a piece of land or lease a piece of land to farm on. So that's huge difference. And we have been having cultural shocks between all the leases we had. And you know, just trash alone was a big problem. In our community, trash is something that smells, and in the American culture, trash is something that is not in the right place. So just simple definition. So those 2 pieces, it was really hard for me. I was in the middle between the landlord and the farmers. The farmers will throw around bottle tops and water bottles and stuff where they think it's not trash, where the landlord will come in and complain about boxes that have been laying around and water bottles. So we had all those issues to solve, and it has been difficult and challenging for us to communicate that. And you know, a landlord that who doesn't understand where these people are in terms of trash to people who doesn't know that's a trash, it was really challenging for me. And that is why I was spending a lot of time in the farm instead of in the office. And I looked like a farm manager instead of executive director. So we have been having some landowner, land seeker relationships that were rocky, and there are a lot of examples. For example, a landlord will come up with an idea and says, oh, for example, it's a good idea to have all this grant together. And at the end of the day, they will come up with these different priorities. And we did not have a lot of leverages in those. Like, we can't upset them because these 200 farmers in our back that we cannot move them to another piece of land in a month or in 2 months. So all those challenges were, and there was another challenge in Tana where we had the goats, and you know, the landlord's priority was to rent the house, and everybody who comes to the land will smell goats poop. So his priority and our priorities were different, and it was really hard for us to move along, and that lease ended up in conflict, and we had to have University of Maine Corporate Extension mediators came in and mediate us at the end. So I have my two friends right behind me. I don't want to take all their time.
Thanks, Muhidin. Yeah, so I think Muhidin and all the speakers have alluded to just the power dynamics not being in your favor when you're a land seeker, which I think is kind of like an overarching challenge. And within that, I think another challenge, since working with Muhidin and supporting this organization, is the time crunch that we all operate in, especially as farmers and those running a farm program in Maine with a short growing season. You know, I think the SBCA is often prioritized getting out on the land as soon as possible over communication, relationship building, and fostering understanding with landlords, especially, or landowners, especially at the beginning of the relationship. The SBCA now has over 200 farmers in the program asking for growing space as soon as the ground can be worked. So of course, listening to the community of folks the organization serves is the top priority, especially when you're a small grassroots organization with, you know, doing the best you can with a small staff. And so that being said, making time for landlord relations, I think would have saved a lot of time in the long run, of course. Like moving a farm operation when things don't work out, as we now know firsthand, is incredibly taxing to organizational time and capacity. As many of us know, there also just isn't that much good farmland in the area, the Lewis and Auburn, like greater Lewis and Auburn area, especially the size and scale that the SBCA now needs with such a large program. So it makes losing land problematic. And then again, related is just the challenge of communication, which due to the amazing interest and growth of the farming program, we haven't always done the best job of communicating with landowners what it looks like for such a large community of people to be using their land. To have 50 or 100 families plus staff farming land looks different than like one farmer. And so managing landowners' expectations from the start has been a challenge. And I think a lot of that is just because of the incredible growth of the program over the past 6 years. You know, we just haven't been able to predict what the growth looks like as the organization reacts to both the community members' needs and desires, and how to match that with the growing scale of infrastructure and resources. Many landowners have been excited about leasing their land to a good cause, to a refugee immigrant group of folks. And well, this has been incredibly heartwarming. On the one hand, I think it's enabled the SBCA to develop land agreements quickly during a kind of honeymoon period and without needed planning that includes a process for addressing inevitable conflicts and challenges down the line. So in retrospect, this climate of goodwill from the onset has also meant the SBCA hasn't always asked landowners what their goals and motivations are for sharing land at the start. And we usually find out later that there are several beyond just supporting a good cause, like Muhidin referenced. And in more than one instance, the SBCA found out later that the landowner or a land owning organization saw that the SBCA as a source of revenue generation in various in various forms beyond what was initially understood. And it related to what Heather said, kind of similarly to that there's always some kind of cost or exchange there. And so understanding that from the beginning. Looking back, I think it would have been helpful in terms of saving time and enhancing communication to develop a sort of like one pager for landlords just to help them understand the reality of leasing land, what the SBCA would look like in their space in reality, and also maybe a questionnaire to find out what their goals for leasing and sharing land are. And yeah, that's a really brief overview, and happy to talk in more detail in the Q&A, but I'm going to turn it over to Lana for some of the other challenges.
Hey everyone, I'm Lana, and I'm so excited to be a part of this conversation. I totally resonate with what all the other speakers have talked about, and so I'm going to try and keep myself to sort of the nuts and bolts. I think as farmers, we're not drawn to farming or seeking land for, to write contracts and, develop relationships with landlords. I think we're in it for the work and the spirituality and the food production and all the beautiful things that come with it. But that being said, farming is hard. And I think, especially when land is being shared or is being borrowed or rented, a lot of conflict can arise, especially when there's either, shared infrastructure use and different schedules and different needs being juggled, or there isn't enough infrastructure and land use looks different to the landowner than they anticipated. So as Ashley, has talked about, really understanding what the intentions of the land being offered is, and making sure that those are shared intentions is super important, as is the goal. The end goals are two different entities trying to, be successful on this land, however that success looks to each party, or, is it one party offering land, observing what's happening, and sort of like having a different opinion. However it goes, conflict can arise. And I think I've learned the hard way personally and through this organization that you can't rely on the relationships that exist. We really need these written documents to not only portray sort of the expectations of the landholder, but also to advocate and protect the needs and the security of the leasee. So I think it's super important, and I've really benefited from, personally and with the organization working with Land for Good and understanding what it takes to write a lease, and then the different ways that you can use the lease as a tool to sort of structure amendments around, say, what is the definition of trash? What shall the water use look like? And, oh, wait, we forgot to even address this part that's in the lease, but we're not enacting it. So let's come up with better language around it. And I think that has been really helpful for us. I'm the farm operations manager with the SBCA, and I've only been here for a year, but came in at a time when there was sort of heading conflict with Whiting Farm, who we've had a really successful mediation process with, and have added amendments to our lease, which is not perfect, but rather than rewriting it and sort of starting over, we've been able to sort of like shift the focus and what the things mean to us both, and sort of balancing those needs and expectations. So yeah, I think that starting off a relationship slow with the landowner, which isn't always possible, is the best option for building a strong relationship that can weather some of these bumpy patches, whether it's disagreements in the moment or sort of like building animosity, I guess, that kind of go outside of maybe the relationship that you've had before. So yeah, I'm not sure how much time I have. I want to squeeze all of it in and talk about it forever, but I think that just managing expectations, and then starting the relationship flow, and then going through the nitty gritty of the activities that you anticipate having on the farm and what it will mean to actually enact those activities. So where the bathroom is going to be if you're getting a porta potty, and where the wash station is going to be, and how each group is moving through that, and what it's going to mean for cleanup and what it should look like, are all things that should be discussed. And then having check-ins periodically that relate back to the lease, and the lease can sort of be the structure that maintains the relationship, is really helpful, although you can meet too much. So I think it's also important to balance the autonomy of the leasee, because what really is important as a landowner is to know that your land is going to be cared for, and whether you're deciding to keep the land farmed or you're doing it for financial reasons, you really should understand that it's a two-way process, and that leasing needs to feel security, be successful, and not have the high risk that is associated with leasing land. As we've heard from all of our amazing presenters, you know, everyone has been displaced from the piece of land where they're growing food, whether it's for, you know, whatever purpose it's being used for. It's really important to just make sure that that person doesn't feel unsafe, because that also is going to really increase conflict and just be another scratching, what, you know, insert metaphor there. But yeah, so I just think that as much as I never wanted to have leases in my life or talk about them so much, I think that it's super important. And one thing that we're experiencing now, and is a new experience for me, is sort of being on the other side of the table now that we have secured land in Wales. So we're fortunate to have a wonderful neighbor who will be haying the space. And so it's been really daunting and also fabulous to use some of the lessons that we've learned as leasees to sort of make sure that we are building in a really transparent, mutual relationship with the person who will be leasing that land. So I think the best, and I think something that I've learned recently is that it's okay to create placeholders in like temporary leases or temporary agreements, as long as they're written, and they can be like really informal if you know you're going to be building a more legally sound lease later. So it can kind of give you that time to understand what it is you need to be writing the lease about in the future. So yeah, I think it can be as dynamic as you want it to be. And also I think it's I'm hoping that it can be a way that we can change this paradigm and the power dynamics and use legal language as a movement maker, because we all need to be accessing land to grow food for our communities. And I think land should be accessible to a wider range of people. I don't know if I still have time. I can keep talking. But
Thank you, Lana.
Thanks, Lana.
I think we are going to still try to break into some small groups. I'm not seeing a ton of questions in the chat, or any questions really in the chat. So let's move to breakout space where we can talk a little bit. If you're in a land seeker group, based on what you heard today, what else would you like landowners to know that from your perspective, what do you need? And for those who are identified as landowners, what are some of the ways that you are thinking about making your land available now that you heard from these folks? So what's kind of your vision now? So we are going to break into those groups, and then we will come back and close this out. Thank you so much, folks, for your patience with the tech piece.
If you've not yet been assigned to a room and you would like to join one of those rooms, please let me know and I'll send you to the proper space.
Hi, Abby, this is Muhidin. Which group should I be? Could you send me to my group with Ashley and Lana, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
And Janet, what group would you like to be in?
Thank you. I've just enjoyed listening. I work with the mass farmers markets, and I'm always trying to get a better idea of what it's like for our vendors. So I think that what I'd like to do is go into the land seekers group, if that's possible.
Yes, that's great.
Thank you.
Great. Muhidin and Ashley, can you tell me which group you'd like to go to, please?
Maybe send us to the seeker group.
Great.
Unless Muhidin has a different opinion. I know he's going to an appointment, so I'm not sure where he's at in the process there.
Sonia, how about you? Which group would you like to be in?
Oh, hey, sorry. If you could send me either to the seeker group or the BIPOC group, that would be whoever's got, less.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Muhidin probably maybe would have appreciated a BIPOC group, but
I'll send him to the BIPOC group. That's fine.
okay. I don't know if you're there, Muhidin.
Ashley, does that sound good? I know you wanted to go with him.
No, that's okay. Yeah, you can put me in the speaker group.
Okay.
Definitely.
And I see Margot, you're still here. Would you like to go to a group?
Sure. I mean, I came to this through the agricultural mediation training, so I'm
Would you mind?
big and as new as you can imagine.
Would you mind joining the landowner group then?
I'll go wherever you like me to go.
That'd be great.
All right, I'll send you.
Arthur, I see that you're still here. You're also a seeker.
Yeah, sure. I support both seekers and I negotiate with landowners. So, but most likely I want to learn more about seeking. So I'm a seeker.
Okay, great.
Liz, do you have a preference of where you'd like to go?
Yes, landowner.
Wonderful. Who was it that was on the SBCMA account?
I wonder if that's Somali Bantu Community Association of Mass.
I'm going to send them to BIPOC just in case.
And Meg, how many minutes do we have in here? I'm sorry, that was like total stage fright on the last one.
No, that's fine. I gave them, I set it to kick them out after 14 minutes, but we can close them whenever we want.
Okay. I think that will be fine. I mean, we're going to go over a little bit, but we did get started a little late.
That's fine. If people are happy to be here, then we can stay here. I don't need the room back until 3:15.
Okay.
Or I don't need the line back.
Right.
So far, so good.
Yeah, that rattled me, but it's not a big deal.
That's fine. Yeah, the first breakout session was a little unruly because people kept joining the meeting. So I was trying to quickly hustle them into places. And then we had a lot of folks that didn't join their breakout rooms.
Mm-hmm.
I should have set it to automatically send them without prompting them to join.
Right. I am surprised at the number of people that came in, or, I guess that's what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess for our future selves.
Yeah. I don't know if you can turn off the waiting room while you're in a meeting. I don't think you can, but I was trying to watch the waiting room and let people in and then send them somewhere and then watch the waiting room and then send them somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it worked out okay in the end.
And how many groups do we have right now? Is there anybody who's set adrift without a facilitator?
No, we just have the 3 groups.
Super. All right.
So there's
3.
The BIPOC group has just 5 folks in it, and the other 2 have probably 15-ish each, 15 to 17.
Okay.
You might be able to open the. Hi, Liz. Do you need to go back somewhere? Oh, okay.
Huh.
Well, let's see if they come back.
Did you see my note about the evaluation form, the link?
Yes, I've dropped the link into the
Super.
Into the document.
Okay, great. Super.
So the next slide to come up was supposed to be the breakout one, but that's fine because I don't think we needed that.
Right.
So then after that, we'll open right up to the thank you slide.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want that to be shared when people come back here, or do you want to chat first and then I'll screen share? Wait for everyone to get back and then we'll screen share.
I think wait for everybody to get back and then screen share.
Great.
Yeah, then that'll be like a visual cue to me that we're back. We're live.
When I set up the breakout rooms, were you notified when I assigned you somewhere?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I had a few people like Arthur, I kept putting in seek, but then he kept going back in the unassigned list. So I don't know if he was like, I didn't know if you could like reject an assignment or unassign yourself or something.
Right.
So that's good to know that that's an element.
Yeah, I think it's really, yeah, to work in a team in this way is definitely has different challenges than like in person. Yeah.
Yeah.
How did yesterday's sessions go?
They went really well. The webinars, I think, are a great, I wish that the breakout room feature could be an element of the webinar because there's so many facilitation benefits of the webinar that don't exist in a meeting.
Interesting.
And the only thing that I would want from the meeting space in a webinar is the breakout option.
Mm-hmm.
So like in the webinar feature, we can chat just with the presenters and not anyone else, which is nice.
Right, but all of them as a group rather than individually. Yeah. Yeah. I feel like it's information overload in terms of like all the cues and things like that. That's my experience, like trying to share it with presenters and facilitators.
Yeah. So in a webinar, everyone who is going to be visible are they're all called panelists. So you can just chat with all of the panelists in one group chat. So you can just set cues out pretty simply, which is nice.
Yeah, that is really nice.
And then panelists can speak just to us or to everybody. The Q&A function is also really nice because it sends the Q&As in to a queue, and you can choose to select them as I'm answering this live. So you're going to like verbally read the question and then talk about it, or you can type in an answer and it sends that answered question back out to be viewed by all of the participants or just to the person that asked it.
Interesting.
So it really gives you a lot. And if you get questions and nobody sees the questions until they're answered. So if you get questions that are inappropriate or not a question, some people just like put statements in there sometimes that you already covered, you can just dismiss them and no one ever sees them.
Yeah, that's pretty brilliant because there was a question from Susan Parks about, is there a certificate of attendance so that she can
I jotted that down too. I don't know what that means.
Yeah. Feels like something you would ask before, not in the middle of the session, but
right. Yeah, and it was not about today's session, right? Wasn't it about the plenary?
I mean, maybe she's asked it in every session, but she did ask it today.
Yeah, she is not. I've seen her name in other sessions, but she did not ask anything about that.
Right, and there's no affiliation either. That's why it made me a little bit curious as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm very glad we just chose to do 3 sessions, even though it ended up being 6.
Me too. Yeah. We have 2.5 minutes left in the breakout rooms.
Okay.
And when I say close the rooms, that gives them a 1 minute countdown.
Okay. Super.
I saw your write-up in Down East this morning while I was making my breakfast. It was very sweet.
Yeah.
I will try geese.
I have to say, it was like really one of those emails you get and, you know, you do the calculus as to whether you're going to respond to it or not. It was one I was really glad to respond to because it's, we got to do this really fun photo shoot in the field with our goose Hank, and yeah.
I love that. Do you get to keep the photos for your use?
There's basically an embargo on them for 60 days, and then they were like, oh yeah, you could contact us and get some of them. But we haven't seen a copy of it yet. We're still waiting on our copy. So
okay.
But yeah,
I just got my issue yesterday. So
yeah, that's what we figured. There's definitely some folks that had seen it, and definitely some farmers market customers who came to market yesterday and were like, oh, I should have brought it with me. You know, they ran home and snapped a photo on their iPad, which was cute.
Cute.
Yeah, I've never met Brian, but he seems like a really energetic guy, and so it was great to like connect with him. And I mean, it's interesting too, like how many folks in our community receive Down East, because I always think of it as a publication that has a reach outside the state. So
yeah, it definitely does. And my parents get it in Massachusetts, and my grandmother who grew up, or my great aunt who grew up in like Ottawa, Moosehead area gets it down in St. Louis. So yeah, very wide publication or distribution.
Right.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah. I'm realizing who has to edit our conversation out of this webinar.
Who's gonna what?
Who's gonna edit
that's
our
me. I'm going to.
Hello, welcome back. All right.
So folks are being prompted that there's 30 seconds left and they'll be kicked out then, or they can come back now. So that's what's happening.
I see.
Go away again.
Welcome back, everyone. So we are gonna, if folks, the facilitators in each group can share the highlights in the chat, that would be super helpful. And I thank you for staying with us a little bit longer. We're going to talk a little bit about Maine-based resources, and then share out some resources for you if you'd really like to take some action today. But I want to thank everybody for joining us today. I want to thank our panelists so much. Thank all of you for carving out the time. I know that it has felt for me like conference season is a bit of an overlay. I used to just jump in the car and leave behind anything that was happening on the farm to get there. And now you kind of have to elbow your way in there for some space. So I appreciate everybody showing up today and your patience as I learn how to use these tools. We want to thank all the organizers at Maine Farmland Trust and Land for Good, all of our sponsors. Thank you, Meg, for doing the tech today. That has been amazing and really, really helpful. So it looks like folks had a great conversation among service providers. We also are hearing from folks that the number one ask is that the land is affordable. So what does that look like? We also heard about dynamics of not knowing the community and trying to find land that is open for farming. So what does that look like in terms of getting to know the place in which you want to grow food? Excellent. And I think Ashley is going to, I think that Meg is going to bring us back with a slide as well. Super. And someone is sharing in the chat, Cooperative Development Institute, which is an excellent resource. Also Conservation Law Foundation, the Legal Food Hub. So here in Maine, we have access to that. In most of New England, we have access to that. There's an Ask for Conflict Resolution training. We can get to know that as well. So some of the resources I wanted to bring your attention to, you heard from the folks at SBCA that Maine Agricultural Mediation was a help in opening up their written lease and amending it. In Maine, we're also really fortunate to have the Beginning Farmer Resource Network, which is a coalition of service providers who provide resources to new and beginning farmers, as well as farmers who are looking at succession or transferring the farm from their business to another new owner. One other unique piece is farm coaching. So that is a program of the University of Maine in which farm coaches come out to the farm for 4 2-hour sessions. All of these are free programs. So if you're interested in more of those, I'm going to drop those into the chat as well. A couple other comments from folks. Also knowing about Maine Organic Farmers and Gardeners Association. So Bo joined us today. He is the beginning farmer specialist, and MAFGA has some amazing programs to support new farmers in the state. Kara is sharing out of the landowner group that sharing the land, stewardship is not ownership. It's a source of healing, giving others the ability to grow food and medicine. Thinking about conservation and working collaboratively, and important to have mutual goals and visions to make sure it's a good match and a successful relationship for the long term. And there's some resources in there if you want to share, or sorry, save the chat. And I'm going to drop a few more resources into the chat as well. So Meg, I think we can go to the next slide. And you'll find a lot of what I'm dropping into the chat right now. These are also on the conference webpage. So there's a section that has the pre-recorded session, which Kara Cargill has organized that. And there's also some downloads there. So a lot of what I put in, you can find there. In addition, I wanted to share this slide. We encourage folks to learn about and support organizations led by Black, Indigenous, and farmers of color in your region. So here's a list of organizations that are represented at this year's conference to get you started. And finally, I wanted to let you know that we will be sending you a link to the online evaluation form. It'll take you about 5 minutes to complete that. And we're also going to drop that link in the chat right now. It's certainly helpful to us as organizers to know where we can improve, or as you mentioned, some of the additional sessions you might be interested in attending. So again, thank you so much. If you're on mute, why don't you come off mute, and we'll give everybody a clap and a round of applause to our speakers.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Sonia, we're going to stay on for a quick minute.
Is it possible to save that chat somehow?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, there you are, Sonia.
No.
I think there are some notes about how to save the chat in the chat. If
you select the file icon next to where you would type a message, if you click on that, it gives you a number of different places that you can save. So you can save to your computer or to your Dropbox or Drive account.
Okay, we thought it was low.
It doesn't give us, anyway, okay.
We have to select something.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming.
It's grayed out. The open is grayed out. It's trying to it's trying to upload a file from our computer to the chat.
Oh,
That's what mine was doing too.
Yeah.
interesting. Well, we will have the chat saved on our end, and I can go through and pull out all of the links in here, and
Great.
we'll add them to the website.
That would be fabulous.
Thank you all
you
so much. It's
yeah,
really
this has
wonderful
been
to hear your
really
stories.
Fantastic.
Really appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Ciao.
Bye.
Speakers, please stay around for a moment.
Do you need me, Abby?
I think we're good. Thank you, Bo.
Okay, thanks. Thank
Thanks,
you
Bo.
all. It was so great to hear your stories. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thanks, Bo.
For
I'll talk to you guys
facilitating.
later.
See you tomorrow.
Yeah. Bye.
Sorry, my phone died. Did I miss the Q&A?
We didn't
Or did
have
they-
one.
Okay.
I just skipped it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is this everybody? Deb is not.
I don't think some people are there, even though they're there. If you know what I
remove-
mean.
Yeah. Okay. Sonia, Somali band. Oh, that went away.
I put some folks in the waiting room. I don't know if that's
Perfect. No, that's fine. Great. Okay. I'm gonna stop.
Sorry.
Okay.